In under 2 months, a rising founder went from steering a near billion-dollar company to being fired from it and branded a fraud on the front page. She called it a witch hunt. Her investors called it justice. 2 sides, 2 very different stories, and a fashion tech startup that didn't survive either version of the truth. Its name, Zilingo. Welcome back to The Flop Side, the podcast where we uncover the stories of Indian startups that once soared only to come crashing down. I'm your host Priyanka, and last week we watched a Mumbai-based edtech startup that tried to teach in the real world crumble under the weight of India's academic calendar. This week, we're heading to Singapore, into the chaotic world of Southeast Asian fashion, where a large troop of merchants, tailors, and factory owners experienced a digital revolution. 2 young founders spotted an invisible economy hiding in plain sight and built the digital infrastructure to power it, raising hundreds of millions of dollars from some of the most prestigious venture capitalists in the world. But then, just moments away from being crowned a unicorn, it all falls apart as a whistleblower plays a scandalous tune. This is the spicy story of Zilingo and the ongoing scuffle between its top brass.
Act 1. The Spark.
Most people come back from a vacation with a suntan, some special souvenirs, and a phone full of photos they probably will never look at again. But 23-year-old 𝗙𝗵𝗙 𝗙𝗹𝗍 came back with a billion-dollar idea stuffed in her carry-on. This was back in late 2014, when she was working as an investment analyst at 𝗧𝗵𝗲 Capital India, studying digital commerce opportunities across the region. On a trip to Bangkok, she wandered into Chatuchak Market, one of the largest weekend markets on the planet. Thousands of stalls deep, selling everything from streetwear to handmade accessories. And somewhere between vendors shouting over each other and customers passionately haggling, 𝗙𝗵𝗙 noticed something that would have been obvious to anyone, but only she saw how to capitalize on it. These vendors had thriving customer bases. They just didn't exist anywhere outside that market. No website, no catalog, no digital footprint of any kind. If you weren't physically standing in front of their stall, you'd never know they existed at all. A sizable, underserved market hiding in plain sight simply because no one had bothered to build the bridge between old world commerce and the internet. That's the idea Bose carried home with her. And around the same time, back in Bengaluru, Bose had struck up a conversation with Dhruv Kapoor, an IIT Guwahati graduate who had cut his teeth as a software engineer at Yahoo before moving to a gaming company called Kiwi. As a founding duo, they complemented each other very well. One from the world of spreadsheets and term sheets, and the other from the world of code. And both of them with a strong appetite to build something of their own. So in 2015, Bose and Kapoor quit their jobs, pooled together some personal funds, and incorporated Zilingo in Singapore. What they first built was a straightforward business-to-consumer marketplace. Small merchants across Thailand, Indonesia, and Philippines could list their products, and consumers across the region could discover and buy from sellers who had until then been invisible to anyone outside their own neighborhood. Zilingo was basically organizing Southeast Asia's vast informal fashion economy, one storefront at a time. The earliest form of institutional validation came from a $1.9 million USD seed round led by 𝗧𝗵𝗲 India, Bose's former employer. From there, Zilingo's fundraising kicked into gear with real momentum. An $8 million Series A landed in September 2016, with another $18 million Series B following soon after in 2017. Armed with a massive war chest, the company's ambitions expanded well beyond just a consumer marketplace. In 2017, Zilingo began diversifying into a business-to-business platform designed to let brands and retailers procure directly from verified factories, cutting out layers of middlemen that had historically eaten into margins on both ends. This was the real strategic pivot. From a marketplace connecting small sellers to consumers to an infrastructure layer connecting the entire regional apparel supply chain. It was a remarkably sharp read of where the bigger opportunity lived. Consumer marketplaces are brutal, low margin, and endlessly crowded. And nobody had built the operating system for Southeast Asia's chronically fragmented, under-digitized garment manufacturing base. If Zilingo could become that operating system, the ceiling wasn't a fashion app. It was the plumbing beneath an entire regional industry.
Act 2. The Illusion.
Barely a year later, that operating system was ready to go global. In April 2018, alongside a $54 million Series C, Zilingo pushed its new B2B platform, branded as Zilingo Asia Mall, into the US market for the first time. It was positioned as a way for American and European retailers to source directly from Asian factories without the usual minimum order quantities. When asked about the Series C investment, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 team pointed out exactly the gap Zilingo was closing. Major fashion brands typically sourced at roughly $1.5 apiece, but only in orders of over 1 million units. Zilingo Asia Mall let a small retailer buy comparable quality at around $2 apiece in batches as small as 200 units. For the first time, a boutique owner in Ohio had access to the same supply chain as a fashion conglomerate, just at a scale that actually made sense for their business. But what made this B2B arm genuinely sticky wasn't just the marketplace itself. It was everything wrapped around it. Co-founder Dhruv Kapoor described the strategy as building two products working in tandem. Zilingo Trade handled procurement, letting brands and retailers source both ready-made and made-to-order goods through a network of verified suppliers. Zilingo Factory, meanwhile, was manufacturing execution software or MES, deployed directly onto factory floors to digitize production, track quality, and cut waste. As he went on to explain,
we have an end-to-end view of the supply chain since we work with brands to help them with procurement and sourcing, as well as garment factories to improve their efficiency.
Beyond that, Zilingo's services also extended into finer aspects, like cataloging, where merchants could get professional product photography done for a fraction of market rates, or marketing services to help smaller sellers actually get discovered, or quality control, merchandising, and even a financing layer. Zilingo offered a pay-later scheme on B2B orders, charging under 1% monthly interest, undercutting what most local banks would offer a small retailer with little to no collateral or credit history. A business owner who'd probably not qualify for a traditional bank loan could now secure financing, use it to source inventory, get professionally cataloged, and sell that inventory all within one platform. By early 2019, that full stack of a thesis was paying off in a way few Indian-founded startups had managed on Southeast Asian soil. In February, Zilingo closed a $226 million Series D, led once again by Sequoia Capital, with participation from noteworthy names like Temasek, Sofina, and 𝗏𝗏𝗏. Bloomberg reported the valuation at $970 million. Technically, not yet a unicorn, but close enough that most business press had already begun writing about it as one of Southeast Asia's likely next entrants into that club. The scale of what they had built by this point was impressive. Zilingo was reportedly serving more than 75,000 merchants and around 6,000 factories across 17 countries, operating out of 13 global offices with a headcount pushing toward 900 employees. Also, by the end of the year, roughly 80% of Zilingo's revenue was coming from that B2B engine, not the original consumer marketplace it had started as. The pivot hadn't just worked, it had become the entire business. But then, as we know, the pandemic hit, and in a twist we have seen play out across several sectors, COVID-19 became an accelerant rather than a threat for parts of Zilingo's business, and they were quickly able to bounce back from the shock. Factories facing new cost pressures and being forced to diversify their supply chains away from China turned to digital sourcing faster than they otherwise might have. By the September 2021 quarter, Bose said gross merchandise value, or GMV, was running 40 to 45% higher than at the end of 2019, crediting that jump directly to that shift toward digitization. That said, the pandemic wasn't entirely kind to the business. Zilingo shut down its US and Australia offices in 2020 to focus on its core Asian markets, and went through at least 2 rounds of layoffs, one in April and a second in July, that hit offices in Thailand, India, and Indonesia, cutting an estimated 12% of the global workforce. Even so, the company kept pushing toward a bigger price. By late 2021 and into early 22, with Goldman Sachs reportedly advising on the process, Zilingo was in serious talks to raise a fresh 150 to 200 million round, one that would have pushed its valuation past that $1 billion mark, officially inducting Zilingo into the coveted Unicorn Club and positioning 𝗏𝗏𝗏 among the youngest female founders in the Asian ecosystem to helm a company of that magnitude. This was the moment they had been building towards: a confirmed unicorn, a proven B2B thesis, and 2 co-founders still steering the ship they had built from scratch. But then, in the middle of exactly the due diligence process meant to seal that milestone, everything came apart.
Act 3. The Crack.
On March 30th, 2022, whistleblowers approached Zilingo's board with a specific and damning allegation. The claim was that a series of payments approved by CEO 𝗏𝗏𝗏 had been sent to companies with no discernible connection to Zilingo's operations. The timing could not have been more precarious. This was happening in the exact window when investors were dotting their I's and crossing their T's before the very fundraising round meant to crown Zilingo a unicorn. The board moved fast. The next day, key investors and advisors held an emergency meeting outside Zilingo's offices. 𝗏𝗏𝗏 was suspended immediately following that meeting. And what came next was unusually messy. Partial recordings of that confidential meeting were leaked on social media shortly afterward, turning a private governance dispute into a public spectacle almost overnight. Investors jointly commissioned Kroll, a well-known forensic investigation firm, to examine the company's books. What that investigation surfaced was serious. According to Inc. 42 sourcing, between the 18th and 20th of March 2022, just days before the whistleblower complaint, Bose allegedly directed the finance team to reclassify roughly $26 million of GMV from the main enterprise business line to the side long-tail business line, basically shifting it from the company's dealings with large established brands to its dealings with thousands of small individual merchants. On its own, that kind of internal relabeling might sound like harmless bookkeeping, but the two business lines were tracked and reported very differently, and the effect was that the operational revenue appeared to jump from 22 million to 48 million. Separately, Bloomberg also reported that Kroll's investigation found 𝗏𝗧 had signed off on roughly $7 million in payments to various service providers without the knowledge of other senior executives. But I'd like to reiterate that these are all findings from an investigation 𝗏𝗧 has consistently and publicly disputed, not a court judgment. Oh, and beyond that, there were also allegations of 𝗏𝗧 raising her own, Kapoor's, and then COO's salaries by tenfold, yet again without board approval. These two were refuted by her legal team, stating that Ankiti in fact had taken a 30% pay cut since the pandemic, and that there was a larger growth in Dhruv Kapoor's salary, who apparently got paid both in India and in Singapore. Furthermore, auditors also raised broader concerns about how Zilingo recognized revenue across a platform spanning thousands of disparate merchants. There were shocking mismatches in revenue numbers upon investigation of the books. Regulators also noted that the company hadn't filed its annual financial statements since 2019. The company was now deep in the trenches. On 20th May, the board terminated 𝗏𝗧's employment with cause. The stated grounds, per reporting, included insubordination, neglect of duty, failure to produce documents, failure to appear for questioning, breach of her employment agreement, and what the board characterized as a collapse of trust. If you noticed, the one thing the letter did not mention was any specific fraudulent transaction personally committed by 𝗏𝗧, a detail her legal team has repeatedly pointed to since. 𝗏𝗧's response was immediate and public. As she said,
I have been suspended for the last 51 days on the basis of an anonymous whistleblower complaint, and today I am informed that my employment has been terminated inter alia on the grounds of insubordination. I have neither seen the Kroll nor Deloitte reports and not been given sufficient time to produce any documents requested by them. Any report that comes out post my termination would be vitiated, as it seems to be instructed by conflicted parties, and we will pursue our rights against the witch hunt to the full extent of the law.
𝗏𝗧 also claimed she had been denied adequate time and access to defend herself. She separately raised harassment-related complaints against colleagues, allegations the company said were raised only after her suspension, and which an internal review concluded the company had handled appropriately. In an unusual twist, on the 20th of June, co-founder Dhruv Kapoor submitted a management buyout proposal to investors, one backed by an unnamed investor group aimed at reviving the company. What makes this notable is that the plan carried 𝗏𝗧's own support, despite the very public rupture between the two of them just weeks earlier. But that went nowhere. 𝗏𝗧 finally resigned from Zilingo's board that same month. The company that had been racing toward a $1 billion valuation just months earlier was now free-falling, with no buyout plan, no bridge round, and no last-minute rescue big enough to cushion the fall.
Act 4. The Fade.
By January 2023, the story reached its practical conclusion. Zilingo sold off its technology assets for cents on the dollar, and the company entered liquidation. Now, if we run Zilingo's fall from grace through the Sutra framework, some very clear observations emerge. Starting with Tantra, the internal machinery that's supposed to keep a company honest even when nobody is watching. This is where Zilingo's story turns from ambitious to alarming. somewhere in the company's rapid multi-country expansion, the basic discipline of financial governance fell away entirely. A company preparing to cross $1 billion valuation had gone without filing audited annual statements for 3 years. That's not a minor administrative lapse. And when investigators finally did look closely, they alleged to have found a single executive able to reclassify tens of millions of dollars in reported revenue between business lines with no meaningful pushback. Whatever the truth of who did what, the system itself had failed long before any individual did. The fix here isn't complicated in theory, even if it's hard in practice. Annual audits can't be optional milestones. A fast-growing startup differs until a fundraise forces the question. They're the mechanism that catches a small discrepancy before it becomes a multi-million-dollar one. Any company scaling as Zilingo was needs a finance function that reports independently of the executives, one where no single person can pollute the sanctity of the business. Sit that failure next to Sangha, the people at the center of it all, and a harder question emerges. On paper, Zilingo's founding team had real complementary strengths. 𝗏𝗏 brought fundraising instincts and market strategy from her time at Sequoia. 𝗏𝗏 brought the engineering backbone. The combination is exactly what venture investors look for when they write early checks. But Sangha isn't just about whether the right people are in the room. It's about whether power and oversight are genuinely distributed in a way that catches problems before they detonate. Zilingo also had a marquee board. Sequoia, Temasek, Sofina, precisely the kind of investors whose entire job is supposed to include rigorous, ongoing oversight, not just capital. Yet it took an anonymous whistleblower complaint, not routine governance, to trigger the investigation that ultimately ended the company. Now, we have to be careful here, because unlike the audit gap, which is a matter of public record, everything about who did what within Zilingo's leadership remains contested to this day. 𝗏𝗏 has consistently denied the specific findings attributed to her and has said she was never shown the full investigation reports. Her co-founder and former colleagues have denied her subsequent counter-allegations with equal force. What we can say is this: whatever happened inside that leadership team, the oversight wasn't strong enough to catch it early and wasn't clear enough afterward to resolve it without years of continued litigation. But it would be a disservice to reduce Zilingo to only its failures. Because looking at 𝗧𝗵𝗲, we see an extremely strong read of the market Zilingo chose to serve. Southeast Asia's apparel supply chain was sprawling, fragmented, and almost entirely undigitized. Pair that with Yantra, the product itself, the pivot from a B2C marketplace to a B2B supply chain platform was a strong strategic bet. And by 2020, we saw that it was generating around 80% of the company's revenue. That's a business model that found traction in the real world across 17 countries, with tens of thousands of consumers actively using it. If Tantra and Sangha had held up, there's a real version of the story where Zilingo is still dominating today as one of Southeast Asia's biggest infrastructure success stories, and not a cautionary tale. The human cost of what actually happened hasn't fully settled even as we record this episode. In April 2024, 𝗏𝗏 filed an FIR in Mumbai against Kapoor and former COO 𝗏𝗵𝗲 alleging cheating, fraud, criminal intimidation, and sexual and mental harassment. Both men have categorically denied the allegations and called them retaliatory. Separately, in late 2025, India's Directorate General of GST Intelligence filed a criminal complaint against 𝗏𝗏, alleging issuance of invoices without actual supply of goods and the availing of fraudulent input tax credit. As of mid-2026, neither matter has produced a charge sheet, an arrest, or a trial. I repeat, these remain contested allegations on both sides, unresolved in court. As for 𝗏𝗏 herself, she hasn't stepped away from the industry. In 2024, she resurfaced as a founding partner of Terra Invest, a global investment platform, and the chairperson of Terra's Future Health Group, a health tech venture focused on longevity and AI-driven healthcare. It's a striking third act. A founder rebuilding a career in finance while unresolved allegations from her last company still trail her. The startup that made all of that visibility possible in the first place no longer exists in any form. This story is proof that a startup can get the hardest parts right, the market read, the product pivot, the operational scale across an entire region, and still collapse spectacularly on the parts that never make it into a pitch deck. Nobody puts "we file our audits on time" on a slide next to a hockey stick growth chart. But it's often the difference between a company that survives its own scrutiny and one that doesn't. Which leaves us with a question worth sitting with. In the race to mint unicorns, have we built a system where basic financial hygiene is treated as a roadblock to success rather than the foundation for it? And that's the collection wrapped for the week. No return policy, just the lessons left on the rack. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you're subscribed to The Flop Side so you don't miss what's coming next. Before we wrap up today, just a quick expose on how e-commerce companies track our digital habits. When you save an item to a wish list, automated pricing algorithms track that velocity. And if a slow-moving product suddenly gets a spike in saves, back-end systems can trigger microinflation in price or flash a low stock warning to force a purchase. So next time your cart gaslights you into thinking 400 people are desperately competing for that exact cardigan, just remember, your wish list is quite the manipulator. If you've got a founder story with more plot twists than a courtroom drama, or a startup you think belongs on this show, find us on Instagram at theflopside.podcast. I'm your host Priyanka, and I'm here with my co-creator Nandita. We'd like to thank you for hanging out with us this week on The Flop Side, where we show you the flip side of flop startups.